think we're going to start with a little bit of my background as a practitioner of tarot and some of my opinions on it. But then, of course, Dennis, I want it to be a conversation between us two. And one thing that we talked about is how both of us have experience in the Christian church, and tarot and witchy metaphysical practices aren't always looked on super kindly. And so I think it'll be cool to have a conversation around all of that stuff. And then we're gonna dive into a reading. I'll give Dennis a reading kind of for second half of our session here today. Yeah, so I guess I'll just kick it off with a little bit of my 2 cents on tarot and my background, and then we'll kind of get into our own personal experience. But for anyone listening, whether you are a tarot reader, practitioner yourself, or you've never heard the word tarot before, everyone has their own specific relationship with tarot. But for me, my relationship that I have with the cards is really indicative of my worldview. And the same way anyone can use anything for their own personal growth, I deeply believe that whatever your worldview is, whatever your spiritual beliefs are or lack thereof, tarot is another tool that we have in our tool belt to better understand the self and the world around us. So for me, because I do believe in a higher power that is universal consciousness that lives within all of us, I believe that that's the energy that when I practice tarot for myself that comes through. But any time that I read for anyone else, I believe that it is my role to kind of step back, step away, and allow their higher self, their higher power, their subconscious, their psychology to speak through the cards for them. And I am merely a mirror in that moment to just allow whatever comes up and whatever comes through to be for that person. And I very much believe that, if a Christian God can speak to you through prayer, they can speak to you through cards. If you can get insight from astrology, you can get insight from cards. And even if it is just pattern recognition and, in like a Rorschach test kind of way, awakening different parts of the psyche, I still think it's a valuable tool to see what else we can learn. For me, it is spiritual, but I don't think it has to be a useful tool for everyone. I'll also throw out there that not all readers read reversals. That's kind of an interesting thing in tarot, and not all readers use specific spreads and everything like that. But when I read reversals as subconscious energy and right side up cards as outward energy. I kind of compare it to like a moon sign versus a sun sign in astrology. So that's kind of a specificity of the way that I read.
I like that. I like that because that resonates with me, Reese, in terms of in human design, right? We have our design versus our personality. And design is typically more subconscious, things that other people see in you, versus personality traits, which are things you know about. And so I kind of like that as a framework. So I think that's a great, for me, that resonates very strongly.
Yeah. And that's something that certainly has developed over my relationship with tarot. So I guess that's just kind of 2 cents. But Dennis, I would love to know more about your relationship with tarot and how that's changed, especially with deconstruction and all of the messaging that exists around tarot. Like even, I want to say like 2 years ago, there was a horror movie that came out that was called Tarot. And I was like, ugh, I'm sick of the tarot, anti-tarot propaganda. But I would love to know your thoughts and your experience with the practice thus far.
Yeah. So I have never had a reading. So just I've never done one on myself, and I've never had one before. So I think it's lovely that you'll be my first. So, you always remember your first, I guess. And for me, I grew up in the middle of the satanic panic in the 80s. I can remember having like my Dungeons and Dragons game that somebody got me, like practically burned outside, like that it was this, even let it in the house as an example. So things like Ouija boards or tarot, astrology, anything that wasn't, the magic of the Bible,
Right.
like, handkerchiefs and anointing oil and other tongues and stuff. That's perfectly cool, but a deck of cards would be a big, big problem.
Right.
That's sort of what I grew up in, and so it took a long time to that died hard, in all truth, and they say old habits die hard, and that's something that just stuck with me for a very, very long time, and as I deconstructed Christianity and began to realize, really that we're creating our own reality anyway. So choose what you want to believe in and make that your reality, because within your world, you create that.
Right.
And so I started to learn a little bit more, and just do some readings around it, and for me, I'm very curious. The biggest thing for me, I think, Reese, is not giving away my power. And I think that even from forgetting about the Christian lens and this is wrong or not. It's also, I think there's part of me that wants to make sure that I'm not giving away my power. And so if the cards say something, should that drive my behavior, or am I seeking, what am I looking for out of this reading, let's say, and so for me, it's about how do I interpret this, but not letting it drive decisions or anything in that nature. To me, I'm kind of viewing this as let's see what my higher self, my guardians, my patrons have to say, is how I'm kind of looking at this, as a way of getting past my egoic self and going into my deeper self. So, again, we can, whatever meaning we make of it, we choose. And that's how I'm kind of, that's how I'm approaching it. I'm curious to hear, how does that line up with sort of your approach? Like for somebody who says, I don't want to do this. And I think the same could be said with astrology as well, because like anything else, you got to keep in the middle of things is sort of a viewpoint. Like I remember going on vacation and having this taxi driver, and I think might have been in Spain, or it might have been in Italy or something. It was some very, and our driver was like, the secret to life is to avoid the twos. And we're like, oh, what do you mean? And he's like, well, too much, too little, too big, too small, stay in the middle, keep everything in the middle. And I love that. I love that philosophy in a sense. And so for me, that's where I try to live is not putting too much, not making this the end all be all, keeping the pendulum or keeping more towards the middle of the road.
The Aristotelian golden mean.
Exactly, precisely. So, and people can take anything too far. Like, am I going, whether it's, oh gosh, I this is what my chart says for today from an astrology perspective, I shouldn't, right? And so that changes what you do. And to me, fundamentally, there's a part of me that doesn't love that as a concept of I'm going to rely on what the results of this card or this particular, today's stars to make my decisions for me.
Right.
I think it can inform or help you reflect and feel what the right decision is. But I'm curious where you land, Reese. What's your philosophy on that? How do you see that?
I would say for the most part, totally agree. One thing that when I first started learning about tarot, so I've been practicing tarot for over 12 years now. I started learning when I was very young. And when I first started practicing tarot, one of the things that I found the most compelling about it was, even though it is traditionally a divinatory practice that is traditionally used to predict the future, any sort of guidebook or information on tarot you find will tell you it's ultimately affirmative of free will. That this is, if you keep walking the path that you're walking right now, this is the outcome. But at every step, you have the ability to make a new choice, make a different decision. And as a young person who was told by so many people exactly the way my life was supposed to look and how I was supposed to behave and how I was supposed to look, and that was very empowering for me. Was, here is this tool that says, here's some information, do with it what you want. And actually, I think those who have a great respect for the practice of tarot and for the cards will tell you you shouldn't overly, like, they don't want you to idolize them in this way. The cards want to be a tool for you to communicate with your higher power, your spirit team, you know, however you conceive of that. And this might sound a little odd, but it's like the cards will kind of not stop working, but they'll send you messages that aren't necessarily about what you're trying to divine or what you're trying to get insight into. If you're approaching it in a I don't want to say like an unpure way, but if you're practicing in a borderline unhealthy way, the cards will let you know. I think I probably told this story before, where the very first time I ever did a tarot reading, it was for myself, and I had just gotten my first deck of cards, and I was just kind of like, let's play around with this, and didn't know much about it. And I pulled 3 cards, and I got Death, the Tower, and the Devil. And it freaked me out, and I was terrified. And now looking back, I'm like, okay, at that point in my life, I was like, okay, what guidance from God would I like to have in this moment? And it's like, that wasn't guidance from God. That was the cards saying, like, put it, like, pause, study, understand, and then we're here to come back. And it's not like the cards are putting a curse on you or anything, but it's like, I do believe that was whatever energy that these cards hold, trying to protect me and trying to actually encourage me to have a healthy relationship with this practice that isn't super flippant. And it's like, this isn't just a play toy, but also I think that there is this opposite end of the spectrum, exactly like you're saying. It's like, well, we need to have a good middle ground here that's like, okay, it's not just a play toy. Like the same way if any wanted a sleepover is like, let's play with a Ouija board. I'm like, I'm not messing around with that. Absolutely not.
No, yeah, even I. No,
yeah,
thanks.
it's like, but if someone is like actively trying to do a respectful ritual to try and communicate with someone, I'm like, that's a different situation. So it's like, there is a certain level of respect for ancient practices that I think we have to step into. But at the same time, the practice has such a sense of humor, and everyone who has any sort of personal relationship with a god or a higher power knows that they usually have a sense of humor too. And there's weird cosmic jokes that'll happen. And like the other day, one of my readings, this was a few months ago when I was still in Italy, and one of my readings for the day was like, get ready for some sort of sign to let you know that you're on the right path. Look for synchronicities. So I was looking for synchronicities, and I was sitting at my local bar with my drink and stuff, and I was sitting outside, and I was sitting there, and I was like, man, I really haven't gotten a lot of signs or synchronicities today. Immediately, a bird poops on my shoe, and I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, that's annoying. And then my brain just didn't connect the dots. And I was like, okay, well, where are my signs? Where are my synchronicities? Literally, then a bird poops on my head. And I was like, okay. There it is, you know? And it's like, it's not the universe punishing you. It's just like, come on, it's here, you know? And I think that it's very similar. So that's a little bit of a tangent, but going back to this like ultimate affirmation of the self and not letting it dictate, I think also similarly to astrology, the energy that I step into and have cultivated in my relationship with tarot is about using it as a tool, not as another thing to be worshipped, right? It's like in the same way that I think it's dangerous to have a certain hierarchy within our religious systems. And I think that's why we actually get into a lot of danger with different religions, and having something that actually allows you and supports you in your own kind of personal growth and affirms the power and control and agency that you have in your life and the actions that you take is a really important, powerful thing to maintain. And I think that that's ultimately what tarot is trying to teach us is you don't need the cards to practice tarot, right? It's like, in a certain sense, it's putting a box around your abilities, but sometimes a box is helpful. Like you have to have a benchmark to measure against.